Welcome to University Television Presents. I'm your host, Zeke Hopkins, and joining me today is Monica Church, who is the Executive Director of the Frank Church Institute. She sits on the boards of both the Andrus Center and the Frank Church Institute at Boise State. Monica is an Ethics Commissioner for the City of Boise and a member of both the Sawtooth Society Board and the United States Global Leadership Coalition Idaho Delegation. She is an Idaho native who spent a decade teaching U.S. and comparative government at Boise High School. Thank you for joining us here today, Monica.
Thank you.
So for those who aren't aware, what is the Frank Church Institute, and what is its mission?
Well, thanks for the question. The Frank Church Institute's been around since 1982. It's a nonprofit entity situated in the School of Public Service here at Boise State. And through the guidance of a board of directors, we raise money to fund scholarships, internships for students at Boise State, as well as programming for the community and students related to issues that were important to Senator Frank Church and Bethune Church, like democracy, foreign relations, the rule of law, and service.
So quite a bit on campus, I guess. Well, earlier I had mentioned that you had a past as an educator, and I remember actually being in your class when you used to mention a phrase quite frequently, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it means who benefits in Latin, and it's cui bono. Can you explain the significance of this and the significance of it as you take it into your career today?
Yeah, well, I love that you asked about that. That was something that I used to put on the board at Boise High School almost every day. So cui bono means that who stands to gain from a certain action. And it was really important for me in high school because students always ask, why would they do that? And I found that if you worked backwards, if you asked students, well, who stands to gain? Who would benefit from a certain policy or a certain law, or why lobbyists would move in that direction, that they could come up with some pretty interesting and pretty concrete reasons for why something happens. So I think I was pretty successful as an educator because I believe that my students could come to consequential decisions using some tools that I gave them in a little historical context. And that phrase, cui bono. And you're not the only student that remembers that phrase. It's funny that you brought that up. How I use it in my current job, well, every day, multiple times a day, I ask myself, well, who's going to benefit from the decisions that I make? And if the answer isn't young people becoming more engaged and having more opportunities to participate, then I'm not likely to direct the Institute in that direction. So, for example, who benefits? We just recently reconfigured our scholarship program to add a new scholarship, a full year, all tuition and fees for a student who wants to study public affairs. Obviously, this is good for the university, for the student, for the School of Public Service, and then the Institute, as we are able to kind of broaden our alumni base, and hopefully that turns into a commitment later. Other ways that I think about who benefits, certainly we are always committed to bringing programs to the university, like the Congress to Campus, which will happen in March, where members of Congress from both political parties come and talk to students about civil discourse and why it's important to compromise. And I think that's good. And then probably the most ambitious program that we are working on is the High School Model UN. And I think everyone benefits from young people being engaged in diplomacy.
Yeah, well, I do. I'm glad you brought that up. I know this summer you did get the time to work with the High School Model UN. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that and maybe how it ties into civic engagement for people in Idaho, especially young people? And
Yeah, absolutely. So the Frank Church Institute held its first annual statewide high school Model UN program last year. And I was not the executive director then, but the Institute was able to bring together 7 high schools from around the state and about 60 participants. And when I came on in August, I immediately went on a statewide recruitment trip with the new Frank Church Institute Chair of Public Affairs, Dr. Sam Martin. And we visited 23 schools from Sandpoint to Idaho Falls and everywhere in between. And I'm happy to say that in January, we will have 17 schools and almost 300 students participate in the second annual high school Model UN here on campus. And it will be a great opportunity for the university to showcase what it has to offer students from Kellogg and Fort Hall, Lewiston, Rexburg, and so many other places. And it will be a great opportunity to really show some of the mission, the vision of the Frank Church Institute to incorporate students and diplomacy and all those values of Senator Frank Church and Beth Eaton.
Yeah, that's nice. Well, you've been involved in public policy and civic engagement long before your position here as executive director. Where does this stem from, and where has this passion grown from?
Well, as most people know, I was born in Idaho, and when I was born, there were only about 80,000 people in the city of Boise and less than 1 million people in the state. And I was born to the sitting governor, Cecil Andrus, who was also the former Secretary of Interior. He was my grandfather on my mother's side. And then on my father's side, 4-term U.S. Senator Frank Church and his wife, Beth Eaton Church, who herself was the daughter of former Idaho governor and U.S. district attorney. And after Frank died, she became, a political powerhouse in her own right. So I guess that's where it started. I don't know if I had a choice.
Yes.
But I found my passion in high school, like you. I went to Boise High and was a policy debater. And I found a passion in world politics, and that led me to Whitman College, where I studied political philosophy and cultural anthropology. And then I did a year abroad during the Iraq War, and very shortly after the first major school shooting in Columbine. And so I found myself answering a lot of questions about U.S. foreign policy and U.S. domestic policy. And so I thought I had it all figured out. And then when I moved back and after I graduated from college, I worked on a ranch in Arizona, and it was a cattle and quarter horse ranch. And then I had to relearn everything I thought I knew about public policy. And then I studied law in San Diego, where I lived until 2010, when I got a letter that my debate coach had sent, which was actually a letter I wrote when I was 16, and he sent them in the future. And in that letter, my 16-year-old self said I wanted to be a teacher. Huh. I know, isn't that so cute? So I had the good fortune of knowing Boise State's own Dr. John Beater, and he became my mentor. And I got my teaching degree, and then went on to get an MS in educational leadership and administration. And then Boise schools teacher and just kind of, all around amazing educator. Russ Heller, who's also a Frank Church Institute board member, helped me get a job at Boise High School. And that's where I think my passion really took off. Yeah. And, I really wanted students to become involved in policy. And I wanted them to understand things like why hunters and anglers are important for conservation, and then get engaged. As you remember, city club lunches every month, Boise Committee on Foreign Relations, civic activities, forced engagement for a grade, the student council. I did a lot of things to really engage students. So, and my passion now is here at Boise State, and I've only just started.
Yeah, well, I do remember being involved in a lot of stuff and how much it actually made a difference in learning the things that you were trying to teach, especially when you're talking about going to things like the City Club Luncheon. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and what they kind of do in their mission?
Yeah, the City Club, very similar to the Frank Church Institute, is a nonpartisan organization that hopes to develop critically minded individuals through civil discourse. And they meet once a month, and they bring people together on topics that are important to the community, whether it's housing or public space. And I always brought students. There's kind of an adage that if you invite me anywhere, I'm going to bring students, and that's still today the truth. So I think at our heyday, I was bringing 70, 80 students every month, and we'd walk from Boise High down to the hotel. And we'd have lunch and we'd sit with important people from the community, and I think it was really good. I think it helped students understand topics, but it also helped them learn things like salad forks and how to communicate with adults.
Some very basic but necessary things. Well, getting back to the Frank Church Institute, you guys do hold an annual conference starting all the way back in 1982 with Frank Church himself. And this year you organized the Beyond Left and Right Democracy in the 21st Century. Can you explain this event and why this topic was chosen?
Yeah, so by design, the annual Frank Church Conference is free to the public and to students, and we bring together experts on whatever the important topic is for that year. Now, right now, the Frank Church Institute's on a 5-year theme of how democracies survive and thrive in the 21st century, and so this year we did Beyond Left and Right. And what I was really hoping to do was to look at democracy's survival in 3 different ways. At the first level, it was the ground level, so we invited activists, initiative writers, and current and former elected officials to talk about how democracy looks in action. And they did a panel as well as some breakout sessions with students and community members. And then we had another panel, which I called the 30,000-foot vantage point, where we looked at democracy around the world, security challenges, and the role of the State Department, the United States State Department, and all of these things. And then we had 2 keynote speakers, one about free media and some of the threats that free media poses and some solutions to that, and then one about the role of religion in American politics. And so, you know, the hope is that everybody that goes comes away with something, some tool to help them understand their role, in this case, in preserving democracy. Yeah.
Awesome. Something for everyone. Well, you do have a long history in the state of Idaho, and you probably understand politics of this state a lot better than most. What do you think sets Idaho apart from the rest of the country?
Idaho is a unique state. So 1 in 3 Idahoans who are registered to vote are actually registered unaffiliated, which really makes sense. Idaho is a fiercely independent state and really, you know, sees itself as apart from the politics of DC and partisan politics generally. And, you know, Idahoans are a very communal people. You know, Idaho knows that its land is one of its most precious values. I think Idaho sees government maybe a little differently than some other states. In Idaho, we want our government to be transparent and fiscally responsible, and we demand it. And because we're a small populous state, we can do that, and we're very welcomed and you know, part of the legislative process. And Idaho, you know, Idahoans are very kind people. I know that growing up and still today, that every time I'm on a rural road, I will get the single finger wave from every person I pass, and I think that is true. That's a uniquely Idaho characteristic, and I know that things have changed and it's a little more contentious, and I know there's a lot of new people in Idaho, but I truly believe that Idaho is still a place where we can have robust debates. And there are enough of us, you know, 4th, 5th, 6th generation Idahoans to maybe calm the waters and get back to what Frank Church and C. Andrus did, and that's bring people together.
Yeah, well, I like that a lot. Yeah. Well, not only do you hold the position of executive director, you also sit on the board of the Andrus Center, as well as being a member to the Sawtooth Society Board, the United States Global Leadership Coalition. You're an ethics commissioner for the city of Boise. You've been an educator here. How do some of these roles overlap into your daily life?
Well, I joke that I often send emails from the wrong email.
Too many.
Yeah. Well, I think they're all, you know, they all have the same mission, and that's to create a space for civil discourse and to you know, really exemplify what makes Idaho and what makes the United States such a great place to live. And, you know, there's a place in this state and in this country for agitators, and I applaud anybody who is passionate enough to go out there and stand up for what they believe. The things that I do and the organizations I belong to are to build bridges and build community and to build conversations between people that want something to get done and maybe those that are able to get those things done. Yeah.
Do you think that being on campus is a good place for you to be able to do those types of things and build those sort of connections?
Yeah, Boise State has been very welcoming. I really, enjoy my time here, and it also has opened up a lot of opportunities for expanding what I was doing at the high school level to not only college students, but even beyond. And having the Frank Church Institute situated in the School of Public Service at Boise State allows us kind of a backdrop, a legitimacy that you really don't get, outside. I mean, Boise State it's a powerhouse, and so I'm glad to be here. I don't think we could do the things that we do without the university.
Yeah. Well, you are in charge of the application process for students here who can attain a scholarship through the Frank Church Institute. How is this scholarship mutually beneficial to students and to your program, especially in terms of civic engagement and getting people out there on the streets?
Yeah, so like I said, we just recently reconfigured the way that we allocate scholarships. So we still have our scholarship based on finding and solidifying an internship either in government, foreign relations, specifically in DC, or abroad. So that scholarship is for students typically in the School of Public Service who want to become engaged in the debate. And so we've had students that have gone to DC, and then we have students that go abroad recently. Or I guess we've been doing it for a few years, but our most recent Frank Church scholar just came back from Palestine with Project Hope, learning about the government and the difficulties, within the arrangement with Israel. And so that's a mutually beneficial relationship between the university, the community, the nation, to have students that have that kind of impact and are able to bring it back to Idaho. Our new scholarship, allowing a student to have a full year without having to think about where else to get that money. My hope is that scholar, that Frank Church scholar, will then be more invested in the Institute and can help us reach more young people, both at the high school but also at the college level. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to increasing that endowment so that we can offer more scholarships in the future.
Yeah. Well, I like that. Is there any goals you have in terms of campus or student engagement outside of the scholarships, or does that come with just hosting more events?
No, it's not just hosting more events. We do want to host more events, and I want students to be more involved. But one of the other things that I am working on is getting more students involved in the election process. So last month, I brought the Ada County Elections Office on campus to host a poll working training, and that was a way to once you get your foot in the door and once you know what you're getting into, once you do it one time, it feels pretty normal. And so we had a bunch of students, we had faculty and staff who all participated in that poll work training. And then, a whole group of us were out there working the polls for the first time. And so those are the kind of things that I really want to bring to the university. I also want to partner with the Idaho legislature again and look at that PAGE program and how we can help facilitate that at the high school, and then keep those pages or bring those pages to the university. But then of course, our programming needs to be centered around students. So, this year, because I taught high school for so long, I made the program geared toward what's a nice way of putting it, the attention span of somebody between the ages of 16 and 22.
Yeah.
And so my hope is that we will continue to grow and develop, and then of course the high school model UN, that's something that I think can really, really grow, maybe even be regional.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear. Is there anything else you'd like to mention, or some events we should be looking forward to in terms of the Frank Church Institute?
Yeah, so January is the high school Model UN,
Okay.
and students will be back on campus, so we'll have some tours. So if you see students running around looking lost, it might be a Model UN kid. So that's an opportunity to kind of engage with rural Idaho students and invite them to campus. Then in March, we have the Congress to Campus events, and so we'll be working with some of the different colleges to make sure that those members of Congress get in front of students in classroom settings and then in larger settings. And then in April, we're planning on hosting an event that we're going to title, Defending a Free Press, where we're going to invite community members to sit down and have a conversation about what the press is and how we can use it to our advantage in a thriving democracy. And then our next conference, next October, I'm really excited about. That one will be on the rule of law. And James Risen, who is a New York Times bestselling author and journalist and national security correspondent, he just wrote a book called The Last Honest Man, which is about Frank Church and his role with the CIA, the FBI, and the mafia. And so he'll be here, and along with a lot of other, A-listers. So that'll be a lot of fun. That's in October. So good things on the horizon.
Awesome. Well, we'll be looking out for those. And thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure to hear all about your career and talk about some of these big topics with you today.
It was good to see you again, Zeke.
Yes. Well, thank you. And thank you, all of you at home, for joining us. I've been Zeke Hopkins, and this is our show, University Television Presents.